all right, who are the true leaders of all Israel on earth today. Salutations to the Akim that are doing this work in truth and sincerity, risking their lives and their freedom to do so. Salutations to the confusion of faith brothers who are joined unto our ranks. And salutations to the Akwaf that are listening and learning. Once again, Yahweh Bashem Havashai Brakatah Bashem Wakar Kadash. This is going to be a lesson about the invention of white people. I'm going to give you the history, the facts, the factual history of the time frame and the events which took place and where they took place when the Edomites changed their nationality yet again and became white. Okay? And I'm going to start with, and this information, first let me read a scripture, which is Psalms 64 and 8. And it reads, "So they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All that see them shall flee away." Okay? So this information, all right, that I'm going to give you, and the books that I'm going to use, are all by Edomites. All right? And it's the Edomite woman. This is how you know the curses is falling upon Esau, Edom, because a lot of information that's coming out as of recently, all right, is the Edomite woman being against the Edomite male, the same way the Judite woman was against the Judite male. All right, the so-called white man, his best ally today is the Negro woman, the so-called Negro woman, because his own woman is turning on him fiercely, man. All right, they're sleeping with Negroes and other men of color. And they're the main ones behind this feminist movement, okay, which is hurting the so-called white man and everything that he does, okay. Yeah, and the curses are just falling on them. The same thing that happened to the Israelites is now starting to happen to the Edomite male. All right, they're losing control over their women, and their women is becoming their biggest enemy, because this information is coming from two Edomite doctors. One being Dr. Jacqueline Batalora, who was the author of the book Birth of the White Nation. So, and she's a doctor, okay? And then, and she was, I know she taught at St. Xavier University here in Illinois. And then the other doctor is the author of White Fragility, the Divide and Conquer strategy, all right, which is Dr. D'Angelo, another Edomite female, okay, and so these doctors are exposing the truth about things that happen, and there was an event that took place in called the Bacon's Rebellion, okay, and it took place in 1676 to 1674. And at this rebellion, what happened was you had men, English men, all right, and Negroes, which is what the record states. And there's been other people who've done the research on these events as well. And all the events that took place up to that, from the 1614 all the way up to 1676, it never said black or white, all right? Negroes have been categorized as Negroes or freedmen, all right? Because some of them were freemen who owned property and slaves themselves. And then some of them were slaves, some of them were indentured servants. And the Edomite indentured servants, who Scottish, Irish, or whatever, that's what they were referred to. They were referred to as the land masses where they came from. There was no such thing as white. And I've told you this many a times. You could also, there was another another historian named Tim Wise, who's made many speeches on this. He talked about how the so-called white men didn't refer to themselves as white prior to the 1700s, which is true, because when the 1700s came along, that's when white superiority began to flourish around the earth. And this is when all their false pseudoscience and the changing of meaning of words and new speak and all these things that they begin to do to back up and support their newfound thing, this category of white, when the truth of the matter is they're really red, all right? And not red as in ruddy. Ruddy is, in the Bible, is referring to something that's brownish with red hues, not something pale that blood shows forth through its skin. That's not what this talking about, okay? But, and some of the things that came along with this newfound white superiority was a lot of privileges, okay? A lot of privileges for white men. Let me pause this. All right, I'm back. Just had to grab my my cup. Because basically it was a divide and conquer thing. All right, because the so-called Negroes, and the natives, who are also referred to as Negroes in Virginia, 1682, Negroes and Native Americans referred to as the same people. They were all referred to as Negroes or called niggers at that point. That happened in Virginia in 1682. That's factual history. Okay, but you had the elites who were basically Amalek, the fake Jews, mostly because they owned up mostly everything, even in Britain at that time. All right, they were behind the banks and behind the slave trade and all these things that were going on. Most of the trade businesses and the banks were even owned by them even at this time. That's how they were able to finance the slave trade, which became very, very popular right around the same time that all this began to happen. Okay, but all of a sudden you had these Englishmen and these Irishmen and these Scotsmen and these other Europeans, Germans. Once this category of white came into play, things began to be different because they got accustomed. All of a sudden you were in league with the elites because of complexion. All right, so you got to be to the first of the line. You were the first into any place and the first out. You got to actually own firearms and guns. It created this despair with all the natives and the Negroes because they weren't allowed to own firearms. They weren't allowed to own land. And it also gave the so-called newfound white man the ability to marry, because I think it was something called miscegenation or something to that effect, where you couldn't, men of color could not marry white women. All right, and it was supposed to be the other way around, but they never enforced it. When white men would get with these women of color, and it wasn't any problem unless they treated them like a white woman in public, you know. But other than that, there was a lot of privileges that came along. And let me read some of them. It was front of the line privileges, the pick of women sexual privileges, land ownership, jobs, firearms, voting, immunity to conviction of crime against colored people. Okay. This gave patriarchal power to the Edomite male, man. All right. And 100 years later, as the U.S. was formed, and then a lot of these laws that were formed in that time didn't go away until 1952. So that's America for you. And then they get mad about Colin Kaepernick, why he wants to take a knee, or why he did. All right? Because America was set up for the white male. Period, man. Okay? So when this Nathaniel Bacon, who was an Edomite, all right, who will be referred to as poor white trash today, he led this rebellion, and there were Gadites with him, natives, and there were Negroes, and they were armed, and they all worked and were indentured slaves together, and they weren't getting fair treatment from the rich elites, man. So when this thing finally kicked off, they used that divide and conquer tactic, man. And it instituted, and then in 1681, for the first time, the title of white was used, man. And it's been a negative and dark history ever since, man. Because like I said, the people, the Europeans that came over, they were referred to as Germans or Scots or English or Czechoslovakians, wherever it is that they came from. All right. And at this point too, the forced labor became darker and darker and darker. All right. And then they were able to convince that these people who had rebelled, that, well, the reason why you're poor and you're broke is because all these darkies. And that wasn't the case. It was the same thing going on today. The 99%ers versus the 1%. All right. The Edomites now are facing the same thing. They're losing their jobs, their wealth, the second class citizenship, which was honored among them. And even though there were levels in that, the middle class is disappearing. And the majority of the people are all becoming lower middle class, very low middle class, into basically it's just going to be two classes, the elites and the working poor. So the middle class is becoming the working poor, and then and then there is no more third class. They're just becoming destitute, homeless, on the verge of being homeless. That is literally, because if you're working poor, that's middle class now. Okay. So it's like yesterday you were British, and now today you're white, and that's pretty much what happened. And that was in 1681, and all this took place on the East Coast, around Virginia. This is when these events, I'm giving you this is factual history, man. And so, and then here's the word I was looking for. I can't say that word. Miscegenation, I believe that it's called. And so that law was put into place, and that law was put into place, but it wasn't enforced when white men, so-called the new race of white men, when they did these things. And you have to remember, Esau Edom has been trying to hide his identity for a very long time. And here we have more Edomite scholars. William Beeson, The Roman Empire of the Edomite, 1853. All right. And I'm just going to read page 9. There are lots of brothers. There's always someone new. So this is very pertinent. I imagine the price of this book is going to go up, just as the book Who is Esau Edom. Like this $16 book, I paid $16 for this book about 11 years ago. This book now goes brand new for about $5,000, used for about $3,000. And so it's between $3,000 and $5,000 for this book, man. Why? Because of the information of factual history and all the resources and other books that were used to put this together by white, so-called now white men. All right. And as I said, once the title of white was created, all the pseudoscience that was built around it and the laws that were built around it, America was all built around this newfound whiteness, which created white superiority, which is false pseudoscience and lies, man. And it's come back to bite them because basically it's ruined the earth, man. It's destroyed the earth. And now at the time when they're being exposed, so we're going to get scriptures to get that. Before that, we're going to read these Edomites who were exposing it, going all the way back to 1853. Okay. Page 9, it says that the true answer to the question, whence came the Romans, may have been returned and even registered in writing before the birth of Christ. All right, because we constantly telling you that the real Romans were dark complected people. All right, these new Romans, these Edomites had taken over Rome and Greece, going back to Alexander the Greek. That's and the so-called white man. He wouldn't call himself white back then, but they no longer refer to themselves as Edomites anymore. They refer to themselves as Greeks and Romans, and some of them Idumeans, which Idumean is just a Greek way of saying Edom. All right, and the Idumeans were mainly the ones that referred to that were the ones who had become Jewish, that Herodian line, and those people who were forced to follow the law, statutes, and commandments under the command of John Hyrcanus, one of the last of the Maccabees, who have subdued cities of Idumeans, of Edomites. All right, and I guess that was part of their surrender. It's like, look, you got to follow our laws. And so now you have a sect of white people who have been referring to themselves as Jewish, even in the time of the Lord. All right. So it says, let me go back to it again. It says, the true answer to the question, whence came the Romans, may have been returned and even registered in writing before the birth of Christ, that the response proceeded neither from Greek nor from Roman, but from the despised Jew. That it has been preserved to us in Jewish targums, in their laws, in their records, that exists amidst the fables and the impieties and absurdities and the blasphemies of the Jewish Talmud, and that it may be comprehended in 20 words, that the Romans came from Esau, who is Edom, and the Italy is Idumea, Rome, the Basra of the Hebrew prophets, which is promised to be destroyed in the Bible, man. All right. The descendants of Esau, says Jewish rabbins, the sworn enemies and descendants of Jacob, even to the end of the world, were at first a small nation inhabiting Mount Seir, an adjacent country contiguous to the land of Canaan. They were easily confined within their own limits, all right? And that's from Allen's Modern Judaism, London, 1816. So there's yet another one. That's Allen's Modern Judaism, London, 1816. That's where this particular information came from. So you got William Beeson and this Allen's guy, okay? So that's Psalm 64. All this information is coming from so-called white men, all right? And white women, for that matter, all right? Because Dr. Jacqueline Battalora and Dr. I forget her first name, but D'Angelo, the author of White Fragility, because it is fragile, because it's a lie, okay? The history is a lie. Everything about the so-called white man, his whole power structure and his existence is based upon his lies and creating a sense of greatness, all right? This is going to be a huge slap in the face of a lot of you scoffers, like the We As Canes gang. And my favorite scoffer, who seems to just love me so much, Max Radazansky, all right? Or Ratansky, or however you say your name, all right? But this is factual information coming straight from them, all right? And I encourage brothers to look this stuff up, man. Dr. D'Angelo, and what she said, this is something that she said was very, it was a very powerful statement. She said, a society that claims race means, is meaningless, but divides itself by color profoundly, and that's the so-called white man. They'll tell you that they divide themselves by color profoundly, but they say that race is meaningless here in America, and that's a lie. Because America was set up for the white male, not the white woman. It was set up for the white man, and that's one of the reasons why these women are coming against them so strongly now. And a lot of white women enjoy the sexual company of men of color, especially the men of the tribes, man. It's just a fact. It's true. Okay? And the so-called white man knows it. That's why, because back in those colonies, when they were first coming over, there weren't that many women, man, Edomite women. I think they said it was about 10 to 1. And a lot of those women were marrying Negroes. And they made punishment really great for those women, too. Because if the white woman married a Negro or a Native American, they inherited because most of the people came over were indentured servants. So that woman's servitude increased by several years. And then her children were also, any children that came from that were made slaves as well, up until, or at least until they were 20 years old, man. All right. And that goes to show you how much the white women, even back then, desired men of color. OK, especially when those men of color were given the same opportunity as the so-called white man. All right. Because the so-called white man is weak and feeble and weak in bed in most cases. And you can understand why women don't really choose them. And you just look at professional sports. All right. Almost all professional athletes, the ones of the darker persuasion, have Edomite, wives and girlfriends. It's just a fact. Okay? Um, so let's go now to who was Esau Edom. This book is notorious to the so-called white man. And I've read this before. I'm gonna read just a little bit out of these 2 pages. All right. And this also kills the that false love doctrine, man. And the Lord does hate, and he hates the nation of Esau Edom. And now they're exposed, man. And it's the time for Esau to be exposed. And it says, as it is written, this is page 22, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. Romans 9 and 13. This hatred by God towards Esau is attributed to the human, is an attribute the human heart cannot accept or embrace. Really, the Edomite male. He doesn't want to be, which is why he created a false universe for himself. He created a false identity where he was God. Kind of like in the Black Mirror TV show, The McAllister, season 4, I think episode 2. This man created a false, and that's a perfect example as to he created a world where he was God, where he was desired, where he controlled everyone else's destiny and kept himself in control through fear. All right, and that's pretty much what he did. All right, it says this, and it says this hatred of God towards Esau is attributed, is an attribute that the human heart, the Edomite heart, cannot accept or embrace. Therefore, many will try to explain it away. And this is what they do. Vocab Malone, Dr. James White, Joyce Meyer, these coon sellout so-called Christians. All right. Because Christianity is and especially this even newer form of Christianity, going back to this colonial time, time when whiteness was created, Christianity was beyond whitewashed. Okay. The scores of theologians have avoided this truth of Scripture and have whitewashed into something more appealing to human nature. God not only hates Esau Edom, the so-called white man, and is against these people, but refers to them as the people of my curse. Isaiah 34 and 5, one of my favorite scriptures. This curse is not just on Esau, but also to his seed and his brethren. So all of you Edomites worldwide, wherever you are, okay? And some of you got dark flesh. All this intermingling, you were marrying all those women of color and you made children, man. The child is whatever the father is. So some of those people came out dark and have mixed and mingled. So it's not a color thing, it's a bloodline thing. It's just something that the so-called white man wants to deny and not tell the truth about that, all right? But I have made Esau bare, and I have uncovered his secret places, that he cannot, and he shall not be able to hide himself. His seed is spoiled, and his brethren and his neighbor, and he is no more. That's straight out of King James. If I'm not mistaken, that's Jeremiah, the 49th chapter, which I was actually going to read. So there's no need to read that. All right. Among Esau's brethren were the Amalekites, that's who the fake Jews are today, which were descended from Esau's grandson. And they give you the scriptures of Genesis 36, 4 and 12. Which is true. Matter of fact, let's go to that. Okay. Yeah, 6 and 12, actually. It says, Genesis 36 and 6. And Esau took his wives and his sons and his daughters and all their persons of his house, and his cattle, and all the beasts, and all his substance, which he had got in the land of Canaan, and went into the country from the face of his brother Jacob. Down to verse 12. And Timur was a concubine of Eliphaz, Esau's son. All right, proving that you're whoever your father is, because the mother was not an Edomite. Okay, and bare to Eliphaz Amalek. And these were the sons of Adaz, Esau's wife. All right. Okay. This is Exodus 17, and I'm going to read verse 8, 14, and 16. Then came Amalek and fought with Israel in Rephidim. All right. Verse 14. And Yahweh said unto Moses, Write this for a memorial in a book and rehearse it in the ears of Joshua, for I will utterly put out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. So Amalek is going to be ultimately destroyed, and all of Esau is. That's what the whole book of Obadiah is about the destruction of the nation of Edom. And in Edom's defense, man, if you were Edomite, you try to cover up and hide that shit too, man. All right? You can't really be angry that they keep trying to say that the Negroes are Hamites and the Israelites and all. They created it. They even created a false pseudo doctrine about so-called white Hamitic people. Trying to say to the people of Canaan, because they were so racist, and during that time period, the pyramids and the relics which were found in the Middle East was so damaging to white superiority. They tried to say that this particular sect of white people were brown skinned. So that goes in, but yet they at the same time they tell you if you had a drop of dark blood, you were no longer white. Man, Esau's a mess, man. They are broken and defeated, man. You know, they are broken and defeated. Okay, verse Exodus 17 and 16. For he said, because we have Salakia. For he said, because that Yahweh has sworn that Yahweh will have war with Amalek from generation to generation, man. All right, there is no remedy for the so-called white man. Okay, I'm gonna jump to page 23 here, and it reads, there is not one favorable or positive statement in the Bible in relation to Esau Edom. But how does this adverse relationship with God towards Esau Edom help us to identify who his character is today? To help us answer this, we have to put ourselves in the role which Esau has been assigned in God's script, because that's exactly Yahweh. This is his story. All right, his script. And his script is that Esau would get dominion over the world, rule it viciously, rule it falsely. All right. And through false dealings and murder, rape, robbery, his blessing was the sword. Through the sword, he would take and steal the world and live in the best places. And they have. Then they whitewashed and lied about history. They lied about when they got into power. All right. It reads, if God hated you and your ancestors, how would you react? And what would you do? By natural reaction, you would be against God and his people to prevent them from finding out you are Esau. All right. And this is exactly what they do. The one that God is against, knowing that if God is against something, so will his followers. All right. Hence the reason why the Jews created anti-defamation leagues and all these different things, and who identify different hate groups, man. All right. Because telling the truth is hate to them. You call them Esau Edom and bring out the factual history. They're referred to that as hate, man. Okay. But I'm gonna read this. This will be the last scriptures. This is the book of Sirach, 10 verses 8, and it reads. I'm gonna read verses 8 and 9. It says, because of unrighteous dealings and injuries and riches got by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people to another. All right. Jumping down to verse 13. For the pride is the beginning of sin, and he that have it, it shall pour out abomination, and therefore Yahweh brought upon them the strange calamities and overthrew them utterly. Yahweh hath cast down the thrones of the proud, the princes, and set up the meek in their stead. All right. Yahweh hath plucked up the roots of the proud nations and planted the lowly in his place. All right. Yahweh overthrew the countries of the heathen and destroyed them to the foundations of the earth. So that is a prophecy which is about to happen, man. All right. The man of sin has been revealed. All right. Who is Esau Edom, as pursuant to 2 Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter. All right. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the 2nd chapter. And Esau Edom, you're finished, man. All right. So with that, I hope this was an edifying historical lesson, that giving brothers some ammunition to just go out and further add insult to injury to these pathetic Edomites and watch them, because they're broken and destroyed.